Hi folks, it's Pastor Dan. Thanks again for joining us today here at Chisholm Creek Baptist Church. As you know, we're going through the book of Daniel. Today we come to one of the great passages of the Bible, one of the great passages of ancient history. And I'm going to try to go slow enough, and we're just going to look at 9 verses, but we are going to look at, if you want to start looking it up now, we're going to be looking at Jeremiah chapter 50 and chapter 51 of Jeremiah. So those two, we're going to get to those in a moment, but that'll be about halfway through the message today. But I usually just give you a reference and then just fly right on by it, but I want you to look it up. So if you have your Bibles, please get your Bibles, put them in your lap, and so as we look at this text and then look up Jeremiah, because we're going to go back 100 years before Babylon was in existence, before this history of Daniel took place, and we're going to see what Jeremiah had to say in prophecy, because prophecy is one of the great ways that we know God's word is absolutely true. And this will be such an encouragement to you and such a thrill to your heart. So I hope that it will be a blessing to you. So today we are starting here, Daniel, the 5th chapter, verse 1. And before I start, I'd like to just mention to my dear friend, Sandra Davis, there in Fort Worth. Her husband is with the Lord now. They were missionaries for many years to Africa. They served the Lord faithfully. Her and her mother watch all the time, and I just want to say, God bless you, Sandra. We love you. Thank God for both of you all watching so faithfully. And so may the Lord bless you, and just thank God that your sweet husband is watching down from heaven, and my dear friend, Carl Davis. So let's have a moment of prayer before we start. Lord, I thank you for your mercy, for your grace. I'd ask, Lord, that you would help me to teach your word today that will bring glory to you. Thank you, God, for the thrilling verses that we see before us today, how it teaches us that only God can know only you know the history. Only you know what's going to happen up ahead. So, Lord, thank you for what you're going to do. I pray, Father, touch hearts and draw them to you today. It's in your name we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. I've entitled today's message, The Handwriting on the Wall. The handwriting on the wall. You know, what we're going to see today, and in fact the next couple of weeks, is this handwriting on the wall has become a common statement. It's just people today talk about the handwriting on the wall. A lot of people don't even know where it comes from. They don't recognize it's from the Bible. But it's right here in Scripture. And Daniel, the 5th chapter, as we start, let me start here with verse 1. Belteshazzar, the king, made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords. And he drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Now, I'll just stop right there for right now, and we'll come back and pick it up as we move along. But this is actually unheard of. Belshazzar is the last king of Babylon, and I'll give you a little bit of the background here, what we're about to see. You know, what we see here today is God's long-suffering and patience. That that's one of the great attributes of God, that God, He allows man to just, he'll give man rope and more rope and more rope, but there does come a point where God says that's as far as we're going to go. And we see that here with Babylon. He gave Nebuchadnezzar a lot of rope, and we've seen that where we finished that the last of Nebuchadnezzar was last week. And so he is now dead. And so we're going to pick up the story today with here at Belshazzar. And what has happened is that because of the other kings that have taken over after Nebuchadnezzar, there were different ones. Let me give you just a quick overview here. And so the events of Daniel 1 to Daniel 5, that we have now moved forward about 70 years from Daniel 1. Daniel himself is in around 90 to 94, 95 years old. He's a very aged man at this point. And so Nebuchadnezzar, as I said, he's already died by this point, and his son took over. Now, you need to listen to his son's name. His son's name was Evil Merodach. Who would ever name their son Evil? You know, like name your son Hitler or something. That just doesn't make sense. But Evil Merodach. But he only reigned for 2 years after his father died, and then he was assassinated. And then there was another man who took over. His name was Neriglissar. He reigned for 4 years, and he was killed in battle. And then there was another one named Marduk, who was the son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar, but he lived less than a year, and he was also killed. But then there was another man, another son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar. His name was Nabonidus. Nabonidus was the son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar, and he reigned for less than a year by himself, but then his son Belshazzar became co-regents together. That means that they ruled together. But Nabonidus cared nothing about ruling the kingdom itself. He loved to be out with the army. If he wasn't with the army, then he was out with the big game hunting, and he loved to go out hunting on safaris and with their different, of course they didn't have guns back then, but they had their ways of killing animals and trapping animals. So he was never in the kingdom. So he left that to his son, Belteshazzar. So, and that's who we read today, Belshazzar, his son. His son is the co-regent who is now, he rules the kingdom, and his father is out with the army. He's out with the others. In fact, by this time that we read in our text, he's actually captured. He's been captured by the Medes, and he is still alive, but he's captured. And so Belshazzar is now the sole ruler of Babylon. Belshazzar was one of these young men that are given with great privilege, and he's very prideful, extremely full of himself, only thinks of himself and no one else. And so what we see here is it's unheard of for kings to ever drink in front of their lords. That was just never done. In fact, we read text from the book of Proverbs that kings were not to do that. If you were going to drink, you didn't drink in front of people where you might become intoxicated in front of those that you had to overrule. That was something not done. But that didn't bother Belshazzar. He wanted to drink with all of his buddies. And so they had this huge, big banquet hall. In fact, today they have uncovered that banquet hall. The city of has all been uncovered here, Babylon. And I was trying to look for the dimensions. I believe it's 172 feet long, 60 feet wide, this banquet hall. It is one big banquet hall. They've uncovered it. They've uncovered parts. Now, of course, the handwriting on the wall, they've not uncovered that because that was all tore down and parts destroyed. But on the wall, the Babylonians put up all their great things they have done, all the people they have overtaken, all the great battles they have fought. That's all put up there in plaster. It was all their prideful way of doing it. Now, Belshazzar, he is going to this great big feast. He has a platform built in this hall, and it lifts him above all the others. So he wants to look down on everyone. And he is constantly giving toast after toast after toast. As I said, this was unheard of. A king didn't drink in front of his lords or others, because if he became intoxicated, it was unbecoming for a king to do that, but he didn't care. He literally wanted to show that he could outdrink anyone there, and he's going to literally drink himself under the table along with all of his friends and everyone there. On top of that is that it was unheard of to bring women into this group. It was always just, if you were going to have any men, it would just be men only, but he brings in the wives, the concubines, and in essence what has happened here, it turns into a big sex orgy. It's so perverted that I do not feel comfortable to even, Kenny and I even speak to you what we read in history of what takes place here. But it is a horrible situation that is going on here, as they are all, and they don't even know it, but this is their funeral wake. He is so foolish. He doesn't know that he's about to be overtaken by the Medes and the Persians. Because you see, you remember that it was Daniel who said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "You are the head of gold. There will never be a greater king than you. You're the very top. But ultimately, you will go away, and there will be just a few more years of those that come after you. But then ultimately, there will be another kingdom, and that was the Medes and Persians, the silver, which would be it's not gold, but silver. It goes down in value each. And then we're going to see the Greeks and the Romans and etc. But so here we are going to see the Medes and the Persians are going to take over. And I'm going to give you some wonderful prophecy from the book of Jeremiah in just a moment about what takes place here. And so, as we see here, let me go ahead and pick up the rest of our story. This is just a little overview here. But let's go ahead here in verse 3. And they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem, and the kings and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine, and they praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. And so what we see here, you remember Nebuchadnezzar, when he was taking Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and Daniel, and taking them back to Babylon, they tore down the Solomon's temple. And if you were to overtake another kingdom, you would want to take the implements of their gods with you to show that your God is greater than their God. And so, which is just ridiculous. That's just a way of doing it, but that's what they thought they were doing. So they bring all the instruments that are used in the temple worship, the goblets, the bowls, etc., and they bring them all back, and they are put into a special place there in the palace. Now Belshazzar knows that those are there. And so here they are drinking, and they're carrying on, and they're carousing, and it's just a big old orgy. But it's not enough for him. He wants them to see that. He says, he brings out a command, go get those holy vessels out from the palace and bring them here to this hall. And they wonder, what's he going to do? So pretty soon, the servants bring in all these beautiful golden vessels that God gave the direction to Moses and exactly how to make them and build them, etc. These are holy vessels dedicated to Jehovah God. And so they bring them in, and they begin to fill it full of wine. And he fills it up with his own personal wine, and he's already pretty well soused anyway. But he begins to drink it down, and as he drinks it out of these holy cups, can you imagine? And it's just dribbling down his beard, and he's looking around at everyone saying, I'll show you, oh Jehovah God, I'm the greatest, I'm in charge. How foolish. How foolish. And that's what is taking place here in verse 4 and 5. And so they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. Verse 5, in the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Now, this is kind of a weird deal. I mean, these lampstands that they would have, it would literally put up black smoke right almost straight up. It's a weird looking thing. And so they're all out there. And so all of a sudden, a man's hand without an arm attached begins to write on the wall of all their accomplishments. And so no one can read it. And we'll talk about that next week. That won't be today. But next week we'll bring in Daniel and we'll see all that read. But so there, all of a sudden, he sees this. Let's go on down here and read continue in our text, verse 6. Then the king's countenance, well, let me go up to verse 5. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then here's old Belshazzar. Keep in mind, they're worshiping Baal because it was the 1 year where they honored Baal, and his name is Belshazzar. So then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him. Oh, I guess they did. So that the joints of his hips were loosened. Literally means his vertebrae in his back came apart. God gave him a chiropractic adjustment like he's never had an adjustment before. And it loosened. His knees knocked against each other. His knees are knocking. I would say this, Belshazzar had the fastest sober up time in history. I mean, he's just about soused out, and all of a sudden, boom, he's completely sober. He sees that hand without an arm. It's writing on the wall. Nobody can read it. Only Daniel will be able to read it a little bit later, and we'll look at that next week. Then the king's countenance changed. His thoughts troubled him. His joints, his hips were loosened. His knees knocked against each other. Verse 7, the king cried aloud. Now that word cried aloud in Chaldean means he screeched. He literally screamed out. And that would probably made everyone else lose their mind. And the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, bring in the Chaldeans and the soothsayers. Well, he should have talked to Grandpa about that. His grandfather was Nebuchadnezzar. Now, it will say it's his father, but you see, in Hebrew and in Chaldean, they don't have a word for grandfather. So anyone that is your relative, whether it's your father, your grandfather, great-grandfather, you just call him father. And so, so it says it's his grandfather. He should have asked Granddad. He said, these people are useless. I mean, you remember the Chaldeans, they never get it right. They're batting a 0. And so the king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads the writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he shall be third ruler in the kingdom. Well, why not 2? Well, remember, there's already 2. His father, Nabonidus, who is imprisoned, but he's still alive, so he can't make him, he's the king of record. And then notice here in verse 8, now all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing. Isn't that a surprise? Or make known to the king its interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly troubled. Now, before he calls them, he was troubled, and now after they show up, he's greatly troubled. His countenance was changed, and his lords were astonished. Well, let's now start putting some of these pieces together. We see here that God's long-suffering and patience has finally reached an end. God let him have his big beer bust, or whatever you want to call it. Big, where everyone is just drinking, which was out of the ordinary for a king to do. And he was above everyone, in charge of everyone. He was showing, I can drink more than anyone else. So he's drinking himself under the table and everyone else. And they're having this sex orgy in there, and it's all going on. But then he says, that's not enough. So he brings in the holy ornaments from Jehovah God, from the temple. Can you imagine, we're having the Lord's Supper? And here, as we take the Lord's Supper, we have the containers with the juice that represent the blood of Jesus. And some person walks in highly drunk, and they stagger up, and they pour out, and they take that cup, and they pour in some rot gut whiskey, and just drink it down and slobber it down and say, hail to the devil. That would be a terrible thing. Well, that would be nothing compared to what is happening here. He is drinking from using his lips to take, first of all, they should never have taken those ornaments away from Jerusalem. But here they have taken them, and he's brought it over to this drunken orgy, and here they are, and as he is now drinking it down, he's looking over at all the 1,000 or so people there, all they're having this big time, and they're all gasping, saying, oh, is he really going to do it? And he's saying, look here, I defy the God of Jehovah. He cannot do anything to me. I'm Belshazzar. I'm the king of the world. But the Bible says the hour doesn't pass by. The only thing God does is send the finger down. I wonder, where did that finger come from? I think I know. That's the same finger that God used when he took two tablet of stones, and put out the holy 10 commandments. That's the same finger that Jesus, when he knelt down, and there next to this dear lady who was caught in sin, and now she has repented of her sin, and he writes in the sand with his finger as her accusers all leave them there alone. And he asks, where are thine accusers, woman? Says, there are none. He says, neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. That's the finger that was writing upon the wall this very special message. And I've got to save that for next week, because we've got too much else to see, but we will get there next week. But let me give you a little bit more overview here as we continue on here. This feast of Belshazzar, this sensual feast that takes place here, we see the writing on the wall. It is beneath the dignity of God will not allow it anymore. He just will not have it. And so God has finally reached a point. It's a sacrilege. And so he will not accept it anymore. It was the most stupid feast in the world, because he is literally celebrating his funeral wake. Within a matter of an hour or so, he'll be dead. He will be underneath the heels of Cyrus, the king himself. The Mede will come and take over. And I'm going to give you some of those verses here in just a moment here. We find that here in verses 2 through 4, which I've already read. As we think about this, I'd like for you to take with me, if you have your Bibles, and turn with me to Jeremiah chapter 50. Jeremiah chapter 50. Now this is 100 years away from this event. It's 100 years before. This is before Jeremiah is ever taken into captivity. And so Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 1 through 3, and in verse 9, 1 through 3, and then verse 9. And so the word of the Lord spoke against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Now, notice here, let me go on in verse 2, please. Declare among the nations, proclaim and set up a standard. Proclaim, do not conceal it. Say, Babylon is taken. Bel is shammed. Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are humiliated. Her images are broken in pieces. This is 100 years before the event takes place. How does Jeremiah know this? Well, the Bible tells us in 2 Peter, holy men of God wrote as they were moved by the Holy Spirit of God. So just as God writes all Scripture, it's all breathed out by God. Let's go on down to verse 3, please. And verse 3, for out of the north a nation comes up against her. Guess where the Medes are? They're straight from the north, which might make her land desolate, and no one shall dwell therein. They shall move, they shall depart, both man and beast. Once the Medes get done with Babylon, no, not even a beast will ever inhabit the place called Babylon again. It'll be it. This place that is so magnificent, it will all be gone. Now that's 100 years out before this event even takes place. Let's go down to verse 9 of that same chapter, please. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9. For behold, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. That's where the Medes and Persians are from, what we call the Medo-Persian Empire. And they shall array themselves against her. From there she shall be captured. Their arrows shall be like those of an expert warrior. None shall return in vain. These arrows will find their target right where they need to find it. And so then we'll go on to Jeremiah chapter 51, verses 11 and verse 28. There's two verses. Jeremiah chapter 51, and then verse 11 and verse 28. Make the arrows bright. Gather the shields. The Lord has raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. It gives you the Medes are not even a great power when this prophecy is given 100 years before. But the Medes will be a great power, and they will take over. For his plan is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord. Amen. And then let's go on down from verse 11. This is to verse 28, please. That same chapter in verse 28. Prepare against her the nations with the king of the Medes, its governors and all its rulers, all the land of his dominion. And so we see here the Medo-Persian Empire is going to come against the Babylonians and destroy them. But how? Because they have such great walls. They're indefensible. There's no way that anyone could ever take those walls down. Well, the Bible tells us how they're going to do it right here. And so remember, those walls are 387 feet tall, 87 feet wide. And then there's there's a moat in between and another set of parallel walls that go with it. And so, but let's go on here as what we're going to see. That the Bible is going to tell us in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 24, Jeremiah tells us that the Medes are going to use some sort of a trick. They're going to use some sort of a snare, a subterfuge, if you will. They're going to literally trick the Babylonians, and they're going to overtake them, even with their great walls and all their defenses here. This is Jeremiah, again, 100 years prior prophecy. That's why I want you to see it. Verse 24. Verse 24. I have laid a snare for you. So do you see? It's a trick. It's a snare. It's a trap. You have indeed been trapped, O Babylon, and you were not aware of it. I mean, they're so drunk they have no idea what's coming. You have been found and also caught because you have contended against the Lord. He says you have put yourself up against God, and God's had enough of it. He's not going to let you continue on in this way. Let's go on with one more verse. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 36. Jeremiah 51, verse 36. Make sure I can find it here. Therefore, let me see. This is Jeremiah 51, 36. Therefore, thus says the Lord, behold, I will plead your case and take vengeance for you. I will dry up her sea and make her spring dry. It tells you what the trick is that I'm going to dry up the Euphrates River. Now, if we have that, so Michael, I'd like to put up here, because I don't know if I put this up last week. This is a picture of Babylon. These are, you can see way in the corner, 15 miles. These are the walls. Here you can see the walls here. There are two parallel walls of both the Euphrates rivers, the tributaries. There is the river Euphrates flowing through the city. It comes through the north, goes out the south. And what's going to happen is this. Let me now tell you the story. Here it comes. Now, this story is not in the Bible. You've seen pieces of it in the Bible 100 years before it ever took place, but we do have it in history, and it's in many historical books. And let me just give it to you quickly. What took place is this. Cyrus the Mede, he goes up the Euphrates River about 50 miles up. And he goes all the way up there, and they find a huge swamp. This swamp is a considerable, it's like the Everglades. And he makes a shunt of the Euphrates River where they would, it's a breach wall where they could funnel the Euphrates River, or a big part of it, into this swamp. He then has his men come down. Half of his soldiers are at one end down here, and the other are at this other end. Now, these are the warriors. These are the highly skilled warriors, and Cyrus is with one of these groups. But up the river, about 50 miles, they have their workers. And they're up there building this. And he gives them, they knew that it would be on this day that they worship this Baal. They would probably have a big brouhaha. He had no idea it would be to the extent that Belshazzar would do it. Since his name is Baal, they thought certainly he would be having a big to-do. He didn't know exactly just all that took place. But he gave the command that when you see the Euphrates River go down, when you see it go down and it becomes fordable, he said that half of his men were to come in this way, half were to come in that way. Now keep in mind, Everybody, it's a big party. These are walls. The world cannot attack them. They're completely secure. They think, well, they've seen, they knew that the Medes might attack them sometime. They had watched their ways of attacking this, so they've all, in fact, the story said they had put over 20 years of food stored in here, thinking that Cyrus would come and lay siege to them, and that's exactly what he was about to do. But laying siege to them, he knew they couldn't just stay in that condition, so this is what they'd come up with. So on this very night, as they gave the command to start draining the Euphrates River into this swamp, what is taking place? As soon as his soldiers see it going down, it becomes fordable. One soldier gets there and it becomes no higher than his thigh. And so they go underneath the walls. And they come out each wall. They do have to kill a few people, but very few, because most everyone is having drinks and they're all carrying on, etc. And so they come into the city, and even Cyrus, who comes in, he says, I believe that they're having revelry, and they probably have left the palace doors open, and that's exactly what happened. We'll go over that, the rest of that next week, when we will see the rest of this, but you can see about what's getting ready to happen here. But all of a sudden, God's hand is writing on the wall. It awakens the king Belshazzar. He is terrified. His knees are shaking. His back is all loose. He doesn't know what to do. He brings in, he screams out, get the soothsayers, get the Chaldeans, get them all in here. But now he's greatly troubled because they can't help him. They never could. And so what do you do now? Well, he's in a world of hurt. It's just about to come down on top of him. But we see here God getting ready to bring in the next group, the next great area. So I want to pause for a moment and just share something with you. You see, so often we think America is completely, no one could ever overtake us. We're too powerful. We're too big. We're too strong. I tell you what, folks, don't ever think you can play games with God. Folks, listen. I've told the people where I pastor that Jesus Christ bled and died on the cross to save your soul. But he never said he would save America. He will judge any country that will go against him. Our country has had over 50 million people, little babies, aborted. And on I could go. And I believe that we are seeing the early stages of being taken over. Very well. God is at work. He's in charge. Folks, I might get knocked off YouTube. Who knows? Because they don't want anybody saying things like this. But let me just say this. God is still in control. And his son died on the cross for your sin. He rose again. He is your Savior. He's willing to save your soul. Our trust is in him. Oh, I love this country. I'm grateful for this wonderful America and all the things it stands for and all the people it's helped out through the years. But there is a national application I think I see right here. That's why I wanted to slow down here in chapter 5 and go a little slower, let you see the history of it, let you see the prophecy of it. Because you see, what God did through Jeremiah, he let them see 100 years before it would ever happen, what would happen. And may I say, God is trying to get our attention today. There is a personal application there. And so there is a great hymn writer. His name is Knowles Shaw. I was not aware of this hymn. It's so I don't know if you've ever heard it or not, but let me just read it to you. It's actually a story. It's a vivid picture of what takes place here with Belshazzar by Noel Shaw, this great hymn writer. At the feast of Belshazzar and 1,000 of his lords, while they drink from golden vessels, as the book of truth records, in the night as they reveled in the royal palace hall, they were seized with consternation. 'Tis was the hand upon the wall. So our deeds are recorded. There's a hand that's writing now. Sinner, give your heart to Jesus. To his royal mandates bow. For the day is approaching. It must come to one and all, when the sinner's condemnation will be written on the wall. A prophetic application. Today, it is a mad pursuit of worldly pleasures in our land. The craze for sports, the uncontrolled eating and drinking, and the false sense of security based upon a shaky prosperity. The Bible tells us of a day is coming when the mighty Babylon of the world's Gentile powers will be destroyed, and that's in prophecy. There is a spiritual application that God wants us to know. What was it that brought down the curtain of Belshazzar? Was it his drunken orgy? Was it his sensual party? Was it the perversity of it all? I don't think so. It was when the king took a holy vessel of Almighty Jehovah God and desecrated them. Today, if you're a Christian, the Bible says your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. You're the temple of the Holy Spirit. That's why I encourage you, if you're a Christian, be sure that you are faithful to your mate. You be faithful to your loved ones. You use your body the way God intended for it to be used. Teach your children to do the same. Don't let drugs and alcohol and all the other stuff overtake it. That's what Belshazzar did. And God called it, their time was up. And we're going to see it next week. And may I say to you, greater is he that's in us than he that's in this world. God has hope for you, and that hope is through Jesus Christ. There's a great hymn, that our hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I hope he's your hope. Would you bow your head with me today? Would you invite Christ into your heart? Would you say, dear God, I need you more than I need another breath of air. Be my Lord, my Master, and my God. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Father. I hope if you prayed that prayer with me, let me know. Let us know here at the church. We'd like to send you some materials. And invite somebody to tune in with you next week as we continue on here in chapter 5. You think this is exciting. We've got a lot more yet to go. And let me say this to you. This is living history, what we're seeing in front of us too. So it will apply to what we are facing, I believe, in our own country at this very moment. God bless you. I look to see you next week.